Welcome to CTO Think, a podcast about leadership, product development, and tech decisions between two recovering chief technology officers. Here are your hosts, Don Vandemark and Randy Burgess.
Hey, Randy. So we're here doing a in-person podcast for one.
Face-to-face.
Face-to-face. You came down to Orlando, spent a few days at Disney. How was the weekend at Disney?
Disney is a lot of work. You have to coordinate with multiple parties to get in to manage multiple queues to get a project done in a certain amount of time. But no, we had a great time. Definitely hanging out with you and the family, my family, some other friends of ours that were joining us. It was great. We got to go to all three parks. It was awesome. Cool. Great time.
Cool. Yeah.
The weather compared to Chicago, this is awesome. There's nothing I can say about the weather better. No humidity. Whereas this humidity, lack of humidity is for Orlando, this doesn't get better than this.
You hit your timing perfectly, and there's no way to plan it because this could have been 20 degrees outside too, or it could have been 80 degrees and raining. So you got lucky on the weather. That we don't get nicer weather than we got here, unless you like it a little warmer. And it was mid 70s. So
I don't know what deal with the devil you made for us, but we appreciate how you coordinated the weather for us.
Sure.
So this is what we did this weekend. Actually came up with a situation that I think is a really good topic to talk about. So we went to the Everest ride, and we did what they call the single line. And the single line is where if they have an odd number of people in a party, instead of leaving a seat open on a two-seater roller coaster section, they'll pull people off the single person line and stick you with random people to go on the roller coaster. Right. So you, JC, our friend JC, and Megan got on one coaster, and then I ended up being on the one right behind y'all.
Right.
And there's two different sections of this roller coaster that are supposed to be kind of the scarier bits. One, you're going up the chink, 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 chink part of the roller coaster that's, I guess, alluding to a dive on the other side, which it isn't.
Right.
But it's still that whole, you're going up really high up the side of this mountain. And then there's another part that you're going up, and then you find out that the track is broken.
Right.
So we both of our cars, both of our trains are going up at the same time. And all of a sudden they stop. And for a good 10 to 15 minutes, I'd say, we did not know what the heck was going on.
Right.
And if I remember right, we had 3 broadcast notifications from someone that I don't think was old enough to drive yet, based on the confidence they expressed over the intercom. But they were just telling us that there was obviously a problem and something would happen. And so what I would like to talk about is, if you are part of a company that's providing a product, and most likely in technology, and things go wrong, what is the best way to communicate to users, to managers, to employees? What is the communication mechanism approach when things are not going well? Because this wasn't good, and only in the sense that we just didn't know what was going on, and we were kind of stuck. And not stuck in a way of, well, I can go do something else. No one could do anything.
Literally strapped in and not able to leave the roller coaster you were on.
Now, given the weather, I was like, this is actually pretty nice, but that's not always going to be the case.
Yeah, we were both on a lift, so we were a little reclined. Yes. You could have turned your head, taken a nap. You could have been fine, but you're right in that the communication could have been a bit better. It certainly So I worked at Disney many years ago, and worked on Splash Mountain and Thunder Mountain, both of which are places with the similar things. And actually was in the tower for an evacuation at one point. And the protocol is when it breaks down, you give the first message, which we didn't even get this time. You give the first message of whatever spiel they gave us at the time, but essentially something's up. You're perfectly safe. We'll get back to you. And then go from there. And that's pretty much the way it works in any business. Now, when you're given the spiel on the ride, you're talking to people from age 7 or 8, depending on how tall they are, all the way up to age 80, depending on how well their heart's doing. In business, you don't have that wide span of ages, but you do also have that wide span of technical knowledge. Most of the time, whatever you're communicating is going to non-technical users. Even if you're addressing technical users, it could be forwarded to non-technical users. So you've always got to work that out. So when we've had issues come up, and any issues we've had come up at Aspire EDU have all been due to other parties' services. So Aspire EDU itself has never broken. Knock on wood. But Amazon had a whole, when Amazon goes down, everybody goes down.
Well, there's a term for that, which is, can't remember the name. It's like it's a down the ladder provider or something. Downstream provider. I
think in this case it's upstream. I think we're the downstream provider of Amazon. So our upstream provider is that. And that's the terminology we use. So we do send something out as quickly as we find out something's going on. And depending on the level of technical wording needed, either I or the CEO write it, because she's the one that right now manages all the customer communications. So if it needs a little bit more technical polish, I'll write it and send it, or I'll write it and send it to her and she forwards it on. Either way is fine. But it's a constant, it's got to be a constant stream of updates, or a regular, I won't say constant, it's got to be a regular stream of updates, to where it's, here's what we know at this point. Here's when we think it'll be fixed, or we do not know when things will change, but we'll let you know. And we'll update you in 4 hours regardless. Is usually the way we phrase it. Certainly. So that's for outages. Meltdown Inspector, when that came out. So when Meltdown Inspector came out, you knew that everybody was going to be reading up on it and wondering how it affected them. This was also a teaching opportunity for us, because what I did was our lead developer had been talking about wanting to learn how to speak a little bit more business, to translate the technical to business terms. So I said, you write the email that's going to all the clients. I'll look it over. I'll make some modifications and we'll send it. So he wrote it. He wrote a perfectly great piece. Included a couple videos, included a couple diagrams. I don't think I changed his wording at all. I think I changed the video he used, just because the video he used was one he watches all the time, and he felt it broke it down. But it wasn't non-technical enough. It needed to be a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more of your icons of Meltdown Inspector involved. So what about you?
Well, I would say that my experience so far is I haven't had a number of outages with my clients that required a lot of notification, because most of my clients where we're dependent on upstream providers. Amazon and Heroku are the main ones. And so the few outages we've had, I mean, the uptime for all these guys has been tremendous.
Absolutely.
So I would say that my biggest thing is listening to the notification systems, alert systems from Heroku. And I get lots of them. And rarely are they important for me. Usually the ones that affect us are pushing data like, hey, you can't right now make pushes to
Right.
change.
Right. Seen plenty.
Or we're seeing issues with dyno, ramping up dynos or something. But a lot of the services we don't have problems with. So, but I would say that when the few times that we've had an issue, usually it starts with Amazon. I will send an email, or I have a direct Slack contact with the main point of contact. And I just say, Amazon's down, I'm looking into it. Or they'll send me an email because they get a notification because of some heightened issue, and they say, what is this?
Right.
So there is the issue where upstream providers are contacting my clients.
Oh, interesting.
Before I sometimes have a chance to say anything.
Interesting.
But I instantly translate it for them.
Right.
And there's nothing I can, like, it's not so bad that they get those communications unless it bothers them. But I guess when I look at the whole scenario like this, I kind of break it down into a number of considerations that any firm should have. One would be timing. You discussed this. How frequently do you get in touch with someone? How soon at the first hint of a problem? If you overreact and send out a notice every time, people will perhaps freak out.
Freak out, tune you out,
Yeah.
not read everything you're saying, so that you may somewhere along that line have something for them to do.
Yeah.
But they've tuned it out by that point. So you're right that it matters.
So timing is a big thing. The defining the level of urgency of the communications. Is this code red, yellow, orange? I mean, we've seen the problem with maybe Homeland Security is that I think we've been stuck on orange or yellow forever. Right. So now it just means that, okay, that doesn't mean anything.
Snafu.
It's totally normal. The next would be, how much information do you give? Because I asked you after the roller coaster, because by the way, we're not on the roller coaster still. They came and picked us up, and they had stairs for everyone. And the teenagers, they're obviously, like, none of them could drive at this age. They got all these adults off the side of this mountain, and they were kind of worried about it because it looked like none of them had handled this situation before, but they did a terrific job with how they handled it.
Well, let's give Disney a little credit here, and I'll talk a little bit behind the scenes here because Randy's slandering them.
Oh no, they did a great job. Those kids did a great job.
So first off, the amount of times you actually have to evacuate one of those rides is very few.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked at Disney over 4 summers and 1 full year, and I can remember 2 times.
Oh wow.
We evacuated.
Wow.
And that was jungle. I don't even want to talk about Jungle Cruise evacuations because you're in the middle of a boat and that's a bit of a mess.
Yes.
Pirates of the Caribbean, Splash Mountain, Thunder Mountain. Splash and Thunder, I can only remember evacuating twice.
Yeah.
Now, breakdowns, people stuck on boats for 15 minutes. Yes, that happens, but actually pulling people off the rides doesn't happen all that often. And
interesting.
You get that training when you're trained on the ride.
Yeah.
And then you don't get it again until the situation comes up.
Yeah.
But what do you have? What do you think they have for just those situations?
Like a booklet.
They've got their standard operating procedures, SOPs. So you break open the evacuation SOP. You go, okay, you're this role, you're this role, you're this role. Go. Here's your duties. And so it's very prescribed. And that's what we saw.
Yeah.
Okay. We saw one person at the train who was responsible for hitting the switch on each car that allowed the lot bars to come up, and the other one down at the bottom of the stairs to keep us bracketed.
Yeah.
Right. One person watching everyone while the other one was working.
Yeah.
So, very, very strict procedures. And I'm sure each evacuation area had a lead or a trainer there, somebody who's, if not done it many times, has done it once or twice and has taught the procedure done. So that, just to bring that back in. So I want to make a point there about the standard operating procedures.
I'll give them total credit. The strongest kid definitely was the one that had to be the burden of the crutch of helping people climb out of this, because we're at an angle.
Oh yeah.
on steep stairs, on very short stairs.
Yep.
So first person came up, said, does anyone need medical attention? So they did triage immediately. And they all looked nervous as heck. So I kind of knew, I was like, they haven't done this before, but they follow those procedures on our car that you weren't on.
Right.
And I was like watching them. I'm like, okay, they've got this under control.
Yeah.
They took each pair of people out of the cars. The guy in my car, the guy next to me almost fell over, but the kid caught him. Mm-hmm. And then we all waited, and then we all hiked up and down Everest, which I know it's not a easy feat, but I've done it now. I've hiked hiked Everest.
You've climbed down Everest. You have not climbed up Everest. Now, I get the better claim because we were higher.
Yeah.
So I went further on Everest than you did.
Yeah.
Now, your wife, Megan, was a couple seats in front of me, so actually she gets the claim for the
being higher.
But anyway, so the point being about all of that, standard operating procedures.
Yes.
So that's also something to have. So that brings up all the terms that come in our field. Disaster recovery plans, business recovery plans, which are two different things. So I've written both. Yeah. What's your experience with each one? As far as have you written disaster recovery plans? What do you feel go in them? As opposed to a business recovery plan?
Well, disaster recovery I had to do for the financial company I worked for. And we basically had to do it because I was after 9/11. We need to have, we're a financial institution, the banks that dealt with losses at that point, everywhere in the industry need to do something. And we talked about data. It was really about data recovery, where data is stored, how people would get to it, especially in the scenario where I was the one that knew everything.
Right.
How would the non-technical managers in the company reach out to the company we used at the time was Iron Mountain. Right. And how would they reach out to Iron Mountain and get that data? Mm-hmm. Then we had a few clients at the time that were like, hey, we need to see your documents. And it took a lot of time. It was the most boring job. But there was no doubt about the necessity. Right. You need to write this in a very technical document format where everything had an index, everything in a table of contents. You were able to quickly reference different sections of a standard document. And this is years ago, so I don't remember all the details, but I remember I need to make it organized enough so that my manager could just say, tell me about this, and I could just look on the table of contents and then reference the page. Right. We had a digital version of it, but the paper one was what most people wanted to have sent to them.
And that was back a little while back as well.
2002,
15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Yes, you should have a paper copy just in case you can't get to your various electronic resources. Yeah. So we have to do both. We have to do that. So a lot of the client schools that we talk to require both. And something that's come up in the last 5 years that was not there originally. Yeah. Breach protocol. Yeah. So what happens if your database is hacked and you find out somebody's got all that data? So our client schools want to know, what's our breach protocol? When will we contact?
And that's newer.
Yes. Yeah. That's newer. That's within the
I've never done that.
5 years or so.
I've never had a client that has asked to do it.
We're held
but I understand why you would.
We have a regulation FERPA.
Oh yeah.
So we have to. So that's more about if there's a breach, when will you tell us? Which is an interesting question. Okay, because they're saying you may not tell us right away, and based on the protocol, we're going to find out as much as we can before we share that with everyone. Yeah. Because the next question is going to be, how bad is it? Yeah. Are my students' data out there? That sort of thing. So we've committed to a certain level of time that we'll let them know after we know, and then procedures for handling. Yeah. So we talked about disaster recovery, including breach. There's also business recovery. Yeah. Did you want to hit something on disaster recovery?
No. I was going back to something I brought up earlier.
So business recovery, we've had a few ask us about that. And that's more hurricane comes through Florida.
Yeah.
I have to evacuate. CEO has to evacuate. How do we continue business in that circumstance?
Yeah.
Okay. You might also have a business where one person's really important, and then you have key man insurance for that sort of thing. So we have a small business recovery plan as well. The good news for us, we're remote.
Yeah.
So everybody we've got Orlando, Tampa, Illinois, Arkansas, and northern Arkansas. So central Arkansas, northern Arkansas. So we're spread out to where there's really not going to be any one event that impacts us all unless it's a nationwide event. Yeah. So we've always got somebody who can keep their eye on it. So that's kind of business recovery as well.
So what I was going to go back to was the amount of, I asked you a question about what do you think went wrong? Like, what is the standard of telling us what's going on? And you're like, oh, in no circumstance will we tell you what exactly is wrong going on. And I'm not saying that that's a bad choice because the information could worry people.
Right.
But there's part of the protocol is how much information do you give people?
That can't be defined. That's got to be a situation by situation because they're not going to come on that intercom at Disney and say, oh, the ride broke down because one of the brakes failed. Or the ride broke down because there's a piece of broken track.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not going to say that. They don't need to say that, really.
Yeah.
They're just going to say, hey, for whatever reason, can't go any further. And we talked about various things that could have happened. And I explained it could just be a sensor went funky. And that's probably all it is. 3 out of 4 times is probably all it ever is a sensor goes funky. Yeah. It's not something with the actual ride. It's something that's sensing whether the ride's broken has gone down. So therefore you have to take the ride down because you no longer know.
On this particular ride, that switching of the track is probably train rail switches are always a problem.
Very much so. It's a moving part that they don't have on any other coaster at Disney.
That's speculation.
I don't want to spoil it too much for those who haven't been on Everest. I want them to get the full experience next time they go to Animal Kingdom. So
we did get to do the ride later, which is it's more fun to do it in a train car than to walk it. Just so people know, don't try to walk Disney's Everest.
Oh no, I have 2 stories to share. One from this, and then one from Saturday night as well. So as we were evacuating, one of the first things they said when we're getting out of the car is phones and cameras away.
They didn't tell us that.
No, they told us that. They said phones and cameras away for safety. Okay. Yeah. They said for safety, which is true. If you're trying to film the back stages of Disney while you're going downstairs, while you're walking in narrow areas, because these are safe, but they're narrow areas, you're going to trip. So they're right that it's safety. But with Disney, I'm sure there's also that secondary. They don't want things up on YouTube. Yeah. Of their backstage, even though probably already exists. Yeah. So let's talk about expectation setting.
Yes, that's where I'm getting at.
Because Saturday night went to the Orlando City season opener.
Yeah.
Soccer match
MLS
against DC United. So this is the second year that stadium has been open. It's a great stadium. Almost everything about the experience there is positive.
Yeah.
They do have an issue that I think is worse now. I think it keeps getting worse, and I don't see efforts to make it better. They say there are efforts to make it better. I don't see them. So what the problem there is entry. Mm-hmm. So if you think of the 4 sides of a stadium, we'll go ahead and say it's a rectangular just for ease of description. Yeah. There's one side that is only for club seats, and there are 3 other gate areas that are for everyone else. And then there's one separate area for supporters because they get special privileges like bringing flags into the stadium, banners, things.
They're louder.
Like They're louder. They probably had a little bit more to consume before the game.
Yeah. So there's Chicago Fire has it.
Yes. Yeah. The security there's a little tighter.
Section 8 is what we call them.
Okay.
I think it's a fire code thing.
We've got the section numbers for those people, but it's actually the section numbers from the old stadium.
Yeah.
So they said, we're not changing our section numbers. So anyway, so they have 3 areas for what is going to be roughly 18 to 19,000 people.
Yeah.
Those 3 areas have 12 metal detectors, 12 choke points.
Yeah.
At total for 18,000 people. In the whole off season, they're like, we're improving our process. We're making things better. Here, we want you to use our mobile app to show your ticket instead of having a hard app, instead of having a hard ticket. I had been to enough games last year where I could not pull up my ticket on my phone that I was like, no. They gave us the choice of getting season ticket cards. I'm like, no, you're going to send me my season ticket cards because I'm not going to mess with this.
Yeah.
Got to the game. First off, it was as mobbed as usual.
Yeah.
And in one of those 3 areas I talked about, they actually took away a pair of metal detectors and were using them for supporter sections. So they increased the amount of flow for supporters and decreased it for the 18,000 others.
Yeah.
And there was a doorway sitting there, not being used, no metal detectors, with plenty of area for there to be more. So it just very much felt like it does not appear to me like you all are doing everything you can. So I think they did not set my expectation proper.
Yeah.
Their way of setting expectation proper throughout the past couple weeks, because they said, hey, it's going to be busy. And it was perfect storm of events as well. There was a basketball game at the arena. There was something going on at the football stadium. So parking itself was bad.
Yeah.
It was just crowded in general. So anyway, they didn't set my expectations. And the only thing they said is arrive early. Because if you arrive early, that gives you more time to get through the gates.
Yeah.
7:30 kickoff. We arrived at 6:50. Okay. Which I think is plenty of time. We got in at 7:25.
Wow.
So 35 minutes just to proceed from mob to in the stadium.
Yeah.
So we got to our seats right when the anthem was starting. So we're just in time.
And that story parallels to a product where if you expect higher demand, you tell your user base or the clients, hey, we expect delays.
Right.
We expect there to be heightened traffic.
Well, not only that, because I will say they set the expectation of there were going to be delays.
Yeah.
But I think what everybody else is thinking is, well, you knew about these delays. You've had a whole off season to improve it. And we get there and we see areas where you're not creating more throughput than you can.
Yeah.
So again, that I haven't called my representative at the club yet. That's something I'll do probably tomorrow and say, hey, can you tell me what happened here? Or can you tell me that something's going to improve? Now, what they may say is that one door that wasn't being used, they're holding open just in case they have to evacuate.
Yeah.
Which maybe fire code makes them, but that doesn't make any sense to me because if they have to evacuate,
turn off the
everybody's turning around anyway. So it doesn't make any sense to me. But that's neither here nor there.
So then another item that I look at for communications is, I guess there's a number of levels on this side, but it has to do with the content of the communication.
Right.
One of it has to do with language. So something that was interesting to me, one, I expected a canned message that would just repeat itself at different intervals related to this issue with the delay in the ride.
Okay.
Because I've heard it on other rides before in the past. Usually Six Flags is what I've been to more.
Right.
And something that I noticed at Disney that seems more consistent than it used to be is the only communication we got was in English. And I typically have heard at various other places at least Spanish.
I agree. I would have expected Spanish as well. Now, Disney being Disney, having people from all over the world there, they're not going to hit everything.
Oh, no.
They're not going to come close most of the time. It's still what I consider South America tourism time.
Yeah.
So they fly whole plane loads of people to come to Disney. And
Yeah.
so they're and I don't, depending on whether they're Brazilian or not, depends on whether it's Portuguese or Spanish.
Yeah.
But I know that there are other places throughout Disney that use Spanish as a second language as well. You're right in that it wasn't canned. It was very consistent. It was the same words every time. So it sounded, it was for the first 2 or 3 it was.
Well, the third one was the worst one.
Right.
Because the same person got on there, did not sound confident in what he was saying, and then he stopped and then went dark. Like it just didn't make any. So what I was sitting there thinking about was I wasn't worried. Mm-hmm. Like I was not worried about safety. If it had just started going again without any communication, I'd have been like, is this the best thing to do?
Right.
But it was more of, okay, you are now lowering my confidence as a user with that I know that you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I felt that was what, if Disney were to take a teaching moment from this scenario, it would be, just say the same thing again.
Right.
At the worst case scenario, just repeat yourself and don't stop talking.
They're absolutely part of that procedure is the breakdown spiel.
Yeah.
So it's right there on the card in front of you.
And that's what he should have just kept reading it.
You read that until you get to the evacuation spiel. When they make that decision, then you pick up that card and you read that card.
But they didn't tell us they were going to evacuate.
They did, but they used very unclear language.
Yes, okay. And that's the problem. That's the content card.
Unclear language. You're right.
They made me think, what are they talking about?
So if I remember the language correctly, it was something's happening with the ride. Please remain in your vehicle until expedition guides come to guide you on your way.
Okay.
So
they're using terminology for the fun of it, but it was like at that point, it doesn't matter. You don't need to market it like there's a Sherpa coming to get you on the side.
That would have been great if they had said that. That would have been even better. And then have actual Sherpas show up.
Yeah, they should have been they were not in costume, and I had no confidence that these kids in shorts knew what they were doing on the side of a mountain. But like that was where I never felt unsafe at this whole point. Mm. But I was like, okay, this isn't being handled well because communication has ended. The confidence level of just everything you're safe. That term was never used. Now I know that saying that can actually make people worry.
Yes. You never want to actually bring up the possibility that they may not be.
Yes.
So at other rides where there has been verbal action over the speaker of a canned sort, so Big Thunder Mountain, Splash Mountain, especially those places where you've got themed.
Yeah.
Splash Mountain's a perfect example. You've got a very specific theme you've got going there. So anything coming across the PA usually is very in character and usually voice acted and all that. Except when they have to break. There's even a button for breakdown spiel.
Yeah.
So you hit the breakdown spiel button. You don't even say it. And then it is consistently delivered. Why not at this one? I don't know. I don't have
and that's what I think they should do. Right. Like that would be my recommendation.
There's no reason not to.
And I think Heroku has a good number of canned. Like I think canned is a way to go until you need to give that extra bit of information. Given that you know the scenarios. But if you have standard like, hey, our upstream provider is having an issue. I get that from my providers on things a lot.
My objection to canned. So
at least for the initial.
Sure, for the initial. But I don't want to see the same canned thing 3 times.
No, I agree with that.
Then I'm going to be like, okay, you're not telling me anything.
Yeah.
You're just...
Well, I agree.
You're just repeating the same stuff so that you can say you've done something.
Sometimes it's a delay to see, does this get worse? Does this fix itself on its own?
When we do our non-canned stuff for Aspire EDU, I try and change up the wording.
Yeah.
Just again, so that they don't glaze over it when they're reading it.
Yeah.
So that I try and give them something new to think about or to digest. So
here's another aspect. Various stakeholders, because not everyone cares the same way or needs the same information. If Everest crumbled during that ride, someone has to talk to Eisner at the top and to tell him why their best ride collapsed. So which did not happen, but it's one of those things of there's investors at Disney, there are safety people, there's the police, or in theory, there's some other government body in Florida that may or may not be owned by Disney that that controls safety. There's other people. So in my case, I have users I have to communicate to. Why can't they get to the service of the product that they need? And there are the people managing it that just trust me to be the technical. I have to have a technical some kind of conversation with them that's different. I can't send to my client, your e-commerce product is not working. I'll get back to you with the same repeated response. I have to explain something to them.
Right. So this is where we don't have this segment in our podcast yet. Maybe we'll add it at some point. This is fact checking. Eisner hasn't been the CEO in I don't know how many years.
Oh, really? Who's the guy now?
I don't remember. But it hasn't been Eisner.
Eisner is back in charge in my scenario.
And second of all, just to everyone out there, If you want to listen to this episode and you want your friends to, tell them to get to it quickly before we get a takedown notice from Disney
for a name, for just using their names in podcast.
Anyway, so yes, different levels are correct. Again, it's going to depend on the application.
Yeah,
B2B, you're gonna just send out same level stuff most of the time, and tinged with a little technical talk, and maybe a couple links or something to say if you want more details, reply here or go here. B2C, to where you're actually dealing with end users directly. Do you even need different levels there? I don't even think you need different levels there, because again, you're talking to an end user now. You may be talking to different knowledge levels of users, but you don't need to send different notes for that. But there are cases where it is. So everything we're talking about is customer service 101 for any business, not just technical businesses, but it's pretty much customer service 101, which is something Disney excels at, and they dropped the ball a little here.
Oh, yeah. So the other thing is channels. Now, in this case, they only had one mechanism for a channel to us, which was a speaker on the side of the mountain. And it worked. I mean, for the standpoint of they need to deliver communication to us, they used the megaphone tied into the system or whatever it was. But I'm talking about more in our line of work. Mm-hmm. How do you go about notifications? Because the various options I can think of off the top of my head: email, number one, Slack notifications. You can pull. Sure. You can have a distribution channel that sends out notifications that would be part of a webhook that would go into a Slack channel, a message board channel, an iOS or Android notification channel,
a status page,
which I have an example to talk about.
We didn't even go there yet.
Yeah, and so you have, and there's push and pull. There's Twitter. There's entire Twitter accounts, and all they do is spit out the status of certain things.
Just because I think that this is interesting to some and not interesting to others. We'll talk a little bit about Disney again.
Yeah,
and I'll relate it to channels.
Disney's good.
You talked about PA.
Yeah,
Splash Mountain. If that ride was down for more than 3 minutes, it was PA and people on the track at the various places.
Yeah.
Because at the time, that's changed now. At the time, there were no lap bars on Splash Mountain logs. So if those boats sat there for more than about 3 minutes, people started getting up and just wandering throughout the ride.
Yeah.
So
and around water,
no, around water, around a ride that could start at any point. Yes, our exit signs hidden, because the exit signs aren't real obvious to you when you're on the ride. That's kind of the point. But yeah, we had to get people out of them immediately.
Yeah.
For Splash, they've changed that now because there's a lap bar. But no, you know my love with SMS right now.
Yeah.
So that's a perfectly reasonable channel as well. We talked about status pages. That's something that we should talk about at the very beginning when we were talking about everything. That's one of the first things after the first 2 or 3 instances we had of down outages. I was like, we need to go find a status page provider because there are a couple providers out there. And because what we were doing is we were sending emails, just emails and emails and emails and emails. And eventually I was like, this is silly.
Yeah.
We send one email. Now we say, hey, sign up for our status page service here with notifications here. And then we only had to go one place to update the actual status. And we mark it partially out or fully out.
When you vetted, this is a subject I'm going to get into, when you vetted your status page provider, did you look and see if their upstream provider was the same as yours?
No.
Because the best example I've ever seen of the failure of a status page was the Amazon outage that happened almost a year, maybe a year and a half ago, maybe longer. I can't remember the timeline. They went down, had a multiple hour issue. And for some reason, not the green check mark of everything's good, but the red X mark of things are not good was actually stored as on the CloudFront service. So Amazon was basically telling the code, the markup was the service is down.
Right.
But we were getting green check marks because that was the fallback. And that was not on CloudFront. And the X, the red warning was stored on S3.
Sure.
So, I mean, like, and these are the kind of things that the best of companies have an issue with.
Sure.
And it just reminded me, like, oh, so if there's a status provider, I'll put their statuspage.io or something.
That's who we use, yeah.
And I was thinking, I bet they're on Heroku or EC2 or something.
As far as I could tell, they're not.
Okay.
Because I think when I was looking was in the middle of an outage.
Okay.
It was one of those where I think it was the worst one we'd had, and it was an upstream issue. But it was a case of it went down and it didn't look like it was coming back up for a while.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm tired of sending emails.
Yeah.
We're going to send one more email. We're going to say, hey, we've implement this new service. Sign up here for notifications when we have new status updates. You can check the status of the various services, all those things.
Yeah.
And can I write that myself? Sure, I can write that myself. Our team can write that ourselves. But it's another one of those things of I'll gladly outsource that to someone for a few bucks a month, then spend development time on a strapped staff I already have. Yeah. To build it ourselves. So
the other, and I guess we're probably gonna need to wind this down soon.
Yep.
But the other thing I would say is know your stakeholders well enough to know who needs to hear about it from random, like through the grapevine, things are down versus who needs a phone call. And that has to do with status on your client chain and importance to the company of communications if they care that much.
I would say I hope you know that before.
You should know that. That's what I'm saying.
I hope you know that before you get to outage, because that should have been part of your sales cycle. Yeah. You got to know who's writing the check or who's nodding their head that somebody else can write the check. And that's a sales call most of the time. As far as the salesperson will figure all that out. Now, do they communicate that to the back end? We're a very small company. So when our salesperson learns something, he discuss it with the CEO very easily. But when you've got separate departments, doesn't happen, and they may not hand that information off.
Well, the scenario I can give is that when I took over at a company, a technology platform that was notorious for being down.
Right.
We rebuilt a number of things, and when we came, and like 2 months later, never had any downtime. Mm-hmm. The first time the system upstream provider went down, and then all of a sudden I get a call from the CEO or the person in charge because someone else at the company said it's down like it always used to be. And all of a sudden, I had to explain why you were hired to make this work 100% of the time. And I had not set expectations well for sometimes our upstream providers won't always be 100%. But also I made the mistake of I didn't know at the time, there's someone paying even closer attention because they were so frustrated with the previous regime. Mm. And so that's what they're always looking at. And so I made sure that every notification that would come from our upstream providers would get to me as soon as possible. And I would make sure that I would route those issues to the person in charge to say, I'm aware of this.
Sure.
Because actually that's what they were more worried about is, does Randy know about this? Because this other person's freaking out and the person in charge didn't want to hear from the other person anymore. And I just said to the other person is like, why don't you call me first?
Right.
Before you call the head honcho, because this will keep our communications where if I'm not aware, you can ding me all day. But if I am aware, it means I'm working on it and we'll make sure that the protocol is followed for how this goes. Right. That conversation saved a ton of time. Mm-hmm. And so, and I didn't tell the person, hey, it's not your business to be concerned. It's not your business to tell the head honcho. I didn't tell them any of that. I didn't say, you need to change. I just said, just between you and me, I would appreciate it if you'd reach out to me first so you can know if I'm actually on the ball. And Absolutely it fixed true. Everything. Absolutely that one conversation true. Fixed everything. So that's kind of what I'm going into with stakeholders. I had multiple people that needed to know certain things and to just have confidence that things are going to get taken care of.
Right. I'm laughing while you're saying that. One of my flaws, and I only have one or two. One of my flaws is
I'm sitting across from you. I see some others, but I'm not going to talk about it.
One of my flaws is I feel like, if I'm just a worker bee, then I don't feel this way.
Yeah.
But if I'm manager or person in charge, I want to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Okay. So where you will see my anger most in a business situation is when I built up a nice narrative. I've been having communications with people, and somebody comes in off the side. Somebody from my company comes in off the side and provides additional information or different information. Yeah. Sometimes accurate, sometimes not, but sometimes too much.
Yes.
I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm trying to give the right information for the right level of person I'm talking to. Yeah. And some people are coming and just dumping information, which just confuses things, raises questions that may have not even been a problem. So that you'll see my anger most in a business situation in that case.
So now the final thing, we're going to say final over and over. The final thing would be the postmortem. Like in Heroku sometimes does this for us. We never hear from Amazon. I don't know, or maybe I'm not subscribed to the right channels.
Right.
But Heroku at least will sometimes come back. And some of my other providers for a big issue, a significant issue, will come back and say, here's what happened. Here's what we're doing to fix it. And I like them. They don't give away anything secret sauce wise.
Right.
But they at least say like, hey, we got caught by this. We want you to know what we're doing to rectify it. Amazon did it once, and they actually put in, it was around the same issue with the status thing when that went down. And they also said, hey, here's our recourse for it. But sometimes you need to do that.
I won't disagree. I don't know that we do post-mortem communications with a lot of the things we have.
Yeah.
Because we know what the problem is. And we're not going to get the cause from Amazon. So all we said is one of our providers has an outage. Yeah. This is what we know. And by the way, if AWS is down, we're down as well, but so is the main learning management system that all these clients are using. Yeah. So that usually we're not the most important thing to them at that moment.
Yeah.
So we did have one incident where it was an upstream provider, but we could have done things better. And we did say that at the end. And we said it in the middle. We said, hey, we know that this sounds like we probably could have avoided or done something to make this better. So we're going to, and we did that. So let's wrap up.
Yep.
For picks this week. It's a very, very specific question.
Yep.
The three most, if you're going to Disney, if somebody's going to Walt Disney World, because there's Walt Disney World, there's Disneyland. So we're talking about Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando.
If somebody's going to Walt Disney World, what are the three things, whether it's a ride, a service like Fast Pass or After Hours or any of those things, what are the top three things you recommend and or what were the most interesting?
For a place to stay, place to stay. For us, I had my brother and his family come down, and I really found that there are some great deals on the fringe of Disney that you can go Airbnb, VRBO, and rent condos that have lots of bedrooms and space geared for these types of trips. And I have talked to people and they're like, oh, I've never thought about that. We've always stayed on site.
Right.
And there's a significantly higher cost with those on-site hotels in most cases, especially depending on when you choose.
Right.
But about a month out, we chose what I thought was a really good condo. We used Airbnb, and we stayed south of Animal Kingdom. If you look on a map, that's kind of the 192, is it 45? I don't know, there's an intersection near here.
I don't know what the intersection
is. But
190.
We found that from where to stay, that there's are good options of condos to rent for large groups that are economical. And we have gone and then the next one would be transportation. The public transportation, the buses, like you when we talked, you were kind of like, oh, buses will be slow. I mean, if you live in a major city, these buses are awesome here. I don't know what you're talking about. They are fast. They are clean. They don't cost you another dime. I haven't even been on the monorail thing. I don't know how efficient that is, but the bus system here is great. But I would say Uber and Lyft, we have never waited longer than 7 to 8 minutes, and all of the drivers have been great. So if you come down, do you need a rental car? Questionable. I don't know.
Depends on the size of your party as well.
Depends on the size of your party, and if you're going to a lot of custom places. But for Megan and I, we were really happy with just the way Uber and Lyft have both been integrated into the kind of area. And then in terms of attractions, I mean, they're all great. I mean, we had a really good experience. I'd say that the most efficient use of time was attending the after hours it was a ticket price, normal ticket price, but you get to there's no lines. You just go through every ride you want to in Magic Kingdom. So,
normal ticket price for about 3 hours of open, but so low crowds that you're walking on the rides.
Yeah.
And not all the rides are open.
Yeah.
And you're experiencing them at night.
Yep.
So it's a different experience at night for some of those rides. Some there's not a different experience. But I'm gonna force an answer out of you.
Oh, okay.
Best ride.
Ooh, wow. Man, I'm gonna have to think about this a little bit. Which one did I like the best? Nothing at Epcot. Oh, what am I talking about? Okay, I do know. The best ride by far is the Aladdin. Not Aladdin. Crap. Avatar.
I'm not cutting that.
No, I don't have to cut that. Avatar Flight of the Hidden...
Flight of Passage.
The Smurfs Take Flight. Something like that. Tall Smurfs Take Flight. So it's not VR. It's 3D with, I guess they call it the 4D experience, but it's essentially you are flying one of the beasts of Avatar, the little dragon things and banshees, and you truly feel like you are soaring above this world. And they have the way that they move the bikes, the way that they do the air currents. I think there are some smells thrown in there, and you truly feel like you're flying. Now, what it doesn't give you is the dynamic ability to steer. Like I thought I was for a while.
No interactivity, but no
it's not
interactivity
dynamic
from you.
Yeah. Now I thought I was at one point. I was like, oh, I'm going to fly this thing to the right, and it wasn't doing what I wanted. But it is truly by far the best ride. Now, the wait time versus I think this ride was a 2-hour minimum wait, and it doesn't get easy to get on there unless you stay on site and you get fast pass 60 days out.
Right.
But if you want to experience the best ride I've ever seen or felt like experienced, it is the Avatar Flight of Passage.
Yeah.
And you told me that,
yep.
and you were right on the money. Yeah.
Yep. So it was worth the 2-hour wait. I'm not sure it's worth doing it 3 or 4 times, waiting 2 hours 3 or 4 times in a trip. You do it once. You realize, yes, I just rode the best ride there is.
Now, I did see a magic carpet on this thing, right? Like Aladdin was there. No? Okay.
No. Aladdin's magic carpet is over in the Magic Kingdom.
I didn't drive
it's
that.
Right in front of Jungle Cruise.
Is it good?
It's like Dumbo. So it's just one of those little carnival rides where you just go up
but
and
it
down.
Feels like you're on a carpet, right? All right.
So enjoyed having you all here.
Yes.
This is not your first time to Disney World at all. It's
been a long time.
You hadn't been to Hollywood Studios. You hadn't. You hadn't been to Animal Kingdom.
Yeah.
You hadn't been to Magic Kingdom in a while.
Yeah.
So, but it was your wife's first time,
yes.
and I think she enjoyed.
She had a blast.
She enjoyed herself, and your brother's family enjoyed it as well.
And then you were along to kind of give us tips, and I think your tips were all great. The only thing you didn't tell me to do was to pack for a week-long trip amongst Everest. And that's probably where we were least prepared, but we survived it.
So I will even offer as my tip. And what's the email address everybody can send it to? Send us emails to for this podcast.
Oh, hello@ctothink.com.
There we go. So if anybody's going to Walt Disney World and has a question, they can most certainly ask, and I'll be glad to answer as best I can.
Great.
Because I live in the area. I worked at the attractions. We have annual passes. We go all the time. So I don't know everything, but I think you navigated it fairly well.
So now you're invited to come to Chicago and wait outside in 40-degree weather for beer. Like, is that the best thing going on in Chicago for the next few months?
I don't know. Last few times I went to Chicago in the winter, all I remember are having to walk the streets very gingerly because of all the ice on the sidewalks.
That's the experience. That's the fun part.
That's where the adrenaline gets going, right? Because when your feet are going out from under you.
For all I know, I'm going to have an excuse to keep coming down here in the spring. We'll just keep doing like paired shows until April or May.
You're more than welcome. So thank you for coming down, and I'm glad you made it. So we'll talk again soon.
Sounds great.
Thanks for listening to the CTO Think podcast. Show notes and previous episodes can be found on our website at ctothink.com. Reviews on Apple iTunes are always appreciated and help promote the show. Patreon contributions help us to produce episode transcripts, which allow people that are deaf or hard of hearing to access the show. If you have feedback, ideas, or want to be a guest, please email us at hello@ctothink.com. Show music is Dumpster Dive by Mark Wallach, licensed by premiumbeat.com. Voiceover work by meganvoices.com. You'll hear from us next week.